Hello and welcome back to NoBS. Today we return to talking about cancel culture and the NFL. The National Football League recently had a team announce that they're retiring their team name and mascot because of very leftist woke activism that's going after all these big figures that possibly reference something that they might call racist. In this case, we're talking about the Washington Redskins, a football team who's been around since the 1930s, and they've had this mascot and name forever. But apparently, now in the present, this has become problematic. The problem is, of course, they're referencing Native Americans. Redskins is assumed to be this sort of racist, offensive term, even though a lot of people could also argue this is an honorary big deal. Like, it's a great honor to have your team named after something like this. Like, the Native Americans could probably take this in a positive way too, but that's not the way it's going in the present. Obviously, cancel culture is at an all-time high. Things are going down all over the place, especially big companies and names. Like, we saw that Aunt Jemima's pancake syrup has been renamed and changed. We saw Land O'Lakes also kind of have a similar thing. They used to have a Native American on their butter boxes, but that was taken off. And that's kind of similar to what's happening to this Washington's Redskins situation. They're taking the team name down, they're changing it. They haven't made announcements to where it's going to go, what the new name is going to be, but we're all standing by. We're waiting to see what happens, and we're going to talk more about it today. We're going to go over the details, talk about why obviously this is silly, why caving in is bad, because the SJWs, they smell blood in the water, and now they're never going to stop. So we're going to get to this whole story soon and more, but first, let's take a quick moment to check out our sponsor. Now's never been a more important time to be safe and get yourself a very effective and very useful face mask. That's why today I'm going to be very excited to tell you about this new deal coming from our friends at Freedom Mask. You can save up to 60% and order yourself a very stylish, very comfortable, breathable mask right now. And it has replaceable filters, which I really love. That's why I recommend using this great quality product from Freedom Mask. Click the link below and you could get yourself a Freedom Mask today, and you'll also be supporting this show while you do it. So thank you for your time. Enjoy the mask. You're going to love it. And for now, let's get back to the show. Great. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk more about the Washington Redskins story. This article from Fox has more details. It says Washington Redskins retire team name logo, no replacement yet announced. This came out on Monday, so the story's still new. I'm not sure how long they're going to take to come up with something new. It might take a couple days or a couple weeks even. I know that the season of football might be starting pretty soon, so I'm sure they're going to want to get it out before then, but we'll see. Let's go ahead and read on and hear what they have to say. The Washington Redskins announced Monday they will change their team name and logo after about 87 years of using it in the wake of corporate and public pressure to ditch the moniker over racial connotations. Oh, the Redskins did not announce a new name. On July 3rd, we announced the commencement of a thorough review of the team's name. That review has begun in earnest. As part of this process, we want to keep our sponsors, fans, and community appraised of our thinking as we go forward. Today, we are announcing we will be retiring the Redskins name and logo upon the completion of this review. Dan Snyder and Coach Rivera are working closely to develop a new name and design approach that will enhance the standing of our proud, tradition-rich franchise and inspire our sponsors, fans, and community for the next 100 years. So basically a full cave-in. I'm very curious if they're going to come up with something better. Like, maybe it'll be the Washington Social Justice Warriors. Like, they should probably just go by with the liberals, the Washington Liberals or something like that, the DC Capitals. I don't know. There's already a team called the Capitals, though. So that's not going to happen. But the point is, yeah, this is a full cave-in on something that's just really not that bad. Like, I've never heard Redskins be used really in any context other than talking about this football team. It's like the only reference I've heard of it. I know it might have been used as a slur, I guess maybe hundreds of years ago. I'm not really sure. But in the present, it's obviously not that offensive at all, if at all. I mean, I think the only people offended by this are like white liberals. Like, you don't see any Native Americans like protesting this or talking about it being really bad. Like, there's a number of other teams that have these kinds of native inspired names and themes. And obviously, I think what's going to happen is this is like the first domino, and then we're going to lose the Cleveland Indians as another team with that name. I know there's like Iowa has teams that are based off of natives. Like, a lot of our states are named after native things. Like, these kinds of names like Idaho and stuff like that. They're named after native tribes. So I wonder where this is going to keep going. Obviously, sports teams are going to be on the front lines now after this kind of cave in. They're going to go for the next one. And then it just keeps going from there. And I think that's the worst part is that you can never please these woke mobs. So I don't know why people even try. I understand wanting to avoid controversy. Like this Washington football team, they obviously just here to make sports and to win games and to make money and stuff like that. They're not interested in like getting super political and standing their ground. Obviously, I would have. I mean, this is like a long tradition. This is 80 years. And I think it could have gone more if they just had a little strength like the natives that they are named after. And then the other part about here is I just keep thinking about the South Park episode. There was a South Park episode where they took the name Washington Redskins, and there was this whole joke about it because this has come up before. Like, this isn't the first time these names and teams have been attacked. Like, around 5 years ago, I would say, was when it came up before. And that's when South Park had an episode. And the basic premise was like, from what I remember, the South Park boys, they took the Washington Redskins name because what happened was last time this came up, the Washington Redskins kind of like put their name out in the open, like they didn't have a trademark on it, so anyone could use it at one point. And the boys kind of used that as a loophole to use the name themselves for their own company, and they made money off it. And there was this whole joke about it. They changed the logo. It's a whole thing. We should do a video probably about that whole South Park episode now that it's become so relevant again. It's so many of these episodes keep popping up because this trend, it's like cyclical. These guys always go after stuff. PC culture is always on the rise here or there, especially in election season. And as they say, this is an election year, and you have to really recognize that everything that happens during election years is related to the election. Now, it might not seem like that. It might seem like this is a totally unrelated thing, but it's part of it. I mean, the liberals are the ones protesting here. They're the ones causing these riots and race baiting and making things out to be offensive like this. So this is just one part of that bad system. Washington has come under fire over the term Redskins in recent weeks, with FedEx publicly requesting that the team change its name. The company reportedly threatened to remove signage from the stadium as well if the team didn't make the alteration by the end of the 2020 season. Big name retailers such as Amazon, Walmart, and Target, as well as Nike and Dick's Sporting Goods, all removed Redskins merchandise from their websites last week. Now, this one I find funny because, I mean, these other companies have so many skeletons in their closet. I mean, these kinds of things like Amazon and Walmart are notorious for like underpaying their workers, treating them like indentured servants. We know that Nike has sweatshops across the ocean over in China or what have you. They have these poor working conditions. People are jumping out of windows. And then it's really, I think it's odd that Dick's Sporting Goods would call Redskins offensive. I mean, look at the first word in their name. And Dick's isn't, if Redskins is offensive, certainly naming your company after a male body part is offensive. I don't get how that works at all, but all jokes and kidding aside, it's really hypocritical from a lot of these companies to like high ground this team who really didn't do anything wrong. I mean, they're not as egregious as these guys. We talked about all these bad things in their past and these real companies, and then they're like virtue signaling on the Washington Redskins. I mean, as far as I know, they haven't mistreated anyone, and they're not like funding sweatshops or whatever. I mean, sure, some of their logos probably end up at one of those places, but it's not like they're the ones perpetuating this bad system. But yeah, let's come after them. I think these companies are trying to get the heat off of them, and they're like, oh yeah, let's call out the Redskins. Let's change team names because that's what's really important. Good job, America. We ended racism. ESPN had reported last week that the team has made the obvious decision to remove the Native American imagery from its logo. The recent national focus on race relations prompted by the May 25th death of George Floyd in Minneapolis brought new scrutiny to the team's name. That's when the Redskins said they would conduct a thorough review of the team name. The team also hopes to build a new stadium and return inside DC city limits. Okay, here is another interesting thing. Okay, this is what I was thinking earlier too. I'm like, how does this relate to this George Floyd thing? Like, a guy dies in Minneapolis. That's horrible. No one's defending that. Obviously, people are going to get punished and they're going to have a court case for those guys that hurt him. But the point is, how did we get from that to renaming a football team? I mean, I just don't get the correlation. Like, it's like with these other stories where we had other stories where they're replacing actors on Family Guy and Simpsons and these other things talking about people dropping roles, and then all of a sudden now we're renaming a football team. It's insane to me. It's like, how do you get from that? So first, you got to start with an arrest gone wrong, a small incident that was very tragic, but normally wouldn't make national news. Like this would just be a local story at best. And then, but what happened was obviously the leftists, the media, all these SJWs and celebrities, they latch onto that story. They race bait it like crazy. They get the whole country into this ruckus. And from there, it's like, okay, now there's more riots and protests and tearing down of buildings. Statues start coming down. And then next, they start going after the companies. Companies are first forced into these apologies and they have to kowtow. And then in addition, anyone that is deemed racist, racist being a very loose term. I mean, used to mean something and used to be really offensive and like, oh, you don't want to be a racist. And yes, people still don't want to be that, but the whole value of that term has totally gone down. And it basically just means anything that a leftist doesn't like. I mean, they're just straight up, they assume racism all the time. They find it everywhere. It's just things that they don't like, they don't want to look at, and they call it racist. Anyway, the point is we go from this arrest gone wrong to riots in the streets, tearing down statues, and now companies are renaming their things because they might be offensive. It might feature a minority or something. And that's supposed to help. Like, what does that have to do with police brutality? Police brutality was supposed to be the first issue, right? It was supposed to be police brutality and, racism against Black people. And then now it's like, oh, racism is everywhere. And now we're tearing down statues and we're taking down old names. It's just a total mess and totally unnecessary. And like I said, this is just the first straw that's going to break this camel's back. And eventually we're going to have all kinds of teams changing their names. Everything's going to be offensive. No one's going to be able to win. It's going to, it's going to be going on the rest of this year until the election happens. That's when things are going to die down. We have to get through the election. And then by December, we could see some normalcy kind of coming back. But right now, things are just starting to ramp up. We're only in July, and it's looking like it's going to be a crazy election year. That about wraps things up. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Make sure you comment your thoughts on everything below. Do you think that this Washington team had an offensive name before? Or are people just getting upset about everything and trying to control things they don't like? I think it's the latter, of course, but tell me what you think in the comments. Also, hit the like button to get this video shared. Subscribe if you're new. Hit that bell, ding, for notifications. And until next time, have a great day.